Tonight on 2020, a John Stossel special.
I promise.
I promise.
I promise.
I promise.
Don't hold your breath.
Politicians can't do most of that stuff.
They can make endless rules that backfire on you.
You hate to put it bluntly, but you're screwed.
And squander your money on a financial mess they created.
Government was saying loan more to people with no credit.
But who really gets things done?
We can move this quickly. It's ready to go.
Big government or big stars?
Brad Pitt's doing more than the government?
10 times more.
Will this election change anything?
A president can't fix all the problems in your life.
Before you fall for their promises, John Stossel gives you his take. A politically incorrect guide to politics. Now, from the White House, John Stossel.
Good evening. Elizabeth Vargas is off tonight. You excited about the election? About how your candidate, when he lives here, will make America better? People do talk about their candidate as if he'll perform magic.
It's time for us to change America.
Fight for what's right for our country.
Do you believe in magic?
Watching the campaign, it's clear that some people are ecstatic.
I saw Barack Obama. He's like my rock star.
Things will get done in Washington.
Kids and our grandkids will have a better life.
Tell you about the magic and the free our soul.
Up with Obama! Biden! Wake up, America!
Boy, it sounds so exciting. The politicians are going to fix America. They're going to give us great free health care, fix the education system, lower gas prices, keep us safe.
I cannot wait for this man to be president.
Barack Obama's candidacy has inspired idol worship that's usually lavished on rock stars. When he gives speeches, people cry. And some of his supporters say things like,
He is the one.
the one. Wait a second. One what exactly?
He is the one. Barack Obama!
When Obama clinched the nomination, he did sound a little as if he thought he had divine powers.
This was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal.
Behold his mighty hand!
This McCain ad mocked Obama for that. But at the Republican convention, there was plenty of McCain worship.
He will bring peace and stability to the United States.
He almost sounds like Superman.
When you running for president, you gotta be Superman.
We actually think that some people can do magic.
David Bose is executive vice president of the Libertarian Cato Institute.
Voters would have to believe that every politician is some sort of combination of Superman, Santa Claus, and Mother Teresa. Superman because he can do anything.
I will keep taxes low.
I will cut taxes.
To balance the federal budget.
We will guarantee health care for anyone who needs it.
Where did I put universal pre-K?
Santa Claus because he's going to give us things.
Ah, there it is.
In this campaign ad, Senator Clinton even compared herself to Santa.
It's like we believe that when one man is chosen to be president, suddenly he rises above all the rest of us. And why are we continually disappointed in presidents? Because they couldn't possibly live up to the powers and the faith that we're investing in them.
Take the promise of energy independence. Every president since Nixon said he would end
this intolerable
excessive dependence on
foreign energy sources.
They promise
and bring us closer to energy independence for our country
by 1980.
By 1985. In 10 years.
By the year 2025.
But today, America is no closer to independence than we were when...
Well, I'm not a crook.
Nixon was president.
I promise you.
Politicians tell us what we want to hear, and we do want to believe.
It's kind of an instinctive reaction. Government should do more on health care. Government should do more for children. But a president can't fix all the problems in your life.
God bless you! God bless you!
It's like that movie Dave, where the president is a bad, selfish man who's then replaced by a look-alike who's good.
The good guy replaces the bad president, and he just calls in an accountant, and they sit down and balance the budget and get everybody a job.
I forgot that I was hired to do a job for you.
If the president were a good man, he'd get everybody a job. I saw it in the movie.
Create more and better jobs
that pay well and can't be outsourced.
But presidents don't create jobs. Entrepreneurs do, often without any government involvement, without politicians ordering anyone about. In fact, most of life works best when you are in charge. Here's a thought experiment. Consider a skating rink. Imagine telling someone who'd never been to a skating rink that you were going to let people strap blades to their feet and then let all of them, old people, young people, good skaters, bad skaters, speed around a rink. They'd say, no, you can't do that. It would be a catastrophe. You need to plan this. You need to direct them. Be careful. I better do that.
Slow down over there. Turn right. Turn left. No backward skating.
Something's wrong. It's not working. More people are falling.
You, speed up. You, slow down. Somebody pick that person up.
Maybe I'm just not a very good president. I mean, skating director. What if we elect someone better, someone more qualified, who knows more, like an Olympic gold medalist? What would Brian Boitano do?
You, don't hold hands. Increase your speed twice as fast as you're going.
Even the Olympian, with his vastly greater knowledge, can't make the skating better by being a boss.
You in the black right there. Please move to the outer edge along the rail.
Nobody was listening to him.
I know, nobody was listening because they don't want to. I mean, they want to do their own thing.
Yeah, it kind of ruins the fun of it. Like, people bossing you around. I don't want to do it then if someone's telling me what to do.
It's not going to be fun. What's the point of coming then?
Kids, don't go too fast.
Much of life would be a drag if a leader directed everything. And in fact, most of our lives are self-directed. Economists call it spontaneous order. On the rink, skaters' self-interests coincide. They want to be free, but not crash. We see spontaneous order in nature. Schools of fish moving together, an ant colony, a flock of birds.
The flock of starlings is self-organized. There's no leader, there's no communication. The Blue Angels can do pre-choreographed stuff, but they couldn't chase a plane with the precision that a flock of birds can do it.
Economist Russ Roberts points out that spontaneous order, not government, guides most of life. We just don't think about it.
We don't notice that there are many, many things in our life that work beautifully and smoothly as if they were organized, but without an organizer.
Government sets some rules, but the buying and selling, the designing and inventing, creating, building, dancing are done by people who, every second, make their own decisions. It's the spontaneous order.
A lot of aspects of our life are like that. We take them for granted.
Just as we take a skating rink for granted. Some people would say the skating rink works because it's small. But when it's a big place like America, you need planning.
The more complex the problem, the more planning you need. But it's not planning at the top. It's planning from the bottom up.
That's how we got language.
Gentili telespettatori, buongiorno.
It's varied and useful and beautiful.
Au cœur de la crise, un document réalisé.
But people once said we need a better universal language, Esperanto. William Shatner then made this movie in Esperanto. But centrally planned language died as quickly as the movie. Communism lasted longer, but its central planning doomed it because planners never could anticipate the myriad wants of different people. There were constant shortages. Soviets waited in line an average 2 hours every day. Sometimes there were riots. And yet, all this election season, the political class acts as if they must direct life. And when there are problems, it must be politicians who solve them.
Barack Obama can give us back our freedom, our trust.
And John McCain will even make kids lose weight.
If you want to fight childhood obesity, then John is your man.
When 2020 returns, they got America into this mess. Now they want to spend your money to fix it.
Maybe the government should do nothing.
Next.
In the past few weeks, our government has taken big steps to do what they say they have to do to rescue the economy. They put more than $2 trillion of your dollars on the line. What's that going to do to your life?
our entire economy is in danger.
Politicians and pundits say it's
the worst financial crisis in decades.
Fear taking hold of the financial markets today.
The cause, say the presidential candidates, greed and lack of regulation.
They said they wanted to let the market run free, but instead they let it run wild.
Democrats say it's the administration's fault.
Deregulation and failure to regulate has been one of our major problems.
That was the Bush view. Don't regulate anybody.
Bush removed all the regulations and let these people run wild.
That claim is absolutely false.
Jonathan Macy teaches corporate law and finance at Yale.
People can blame George Bush with doing a lot of things, but deregulating is not one of those.
There was no real deregulation during the Bush years. It's a side of this story that you may not have heard. Many experts say that today's problems were caused by too much government meddling, not too little. Historically, responsible home buyers and shrewd banks bargained until they found common ground. Home buyers wanted the best rates possible. Banks wanted their money back. But that equilibrium was disrupted when politicians decided that government should
try to make the dream of homeownership more achievable.
Our government is supporting homeownership.
Congress told big government-sponsored companies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buy up more home loans.
Politicians had this goal of being able to wave about the claim that
home ownership rates are at an all-time high.
Seems like a lovely idea. Unfortunately, it was based on people who couldn't afford to pay those loans back once housing prices started to fall.
Economists Russ Roberts and Walter Williams say government was essentially insisting the skaters at the rink go too fast.
They encourage banks and other lending institutions to make loans to people that the banks and lending institutions themselves would not have done. They would not have taken on that level of risk.
They would have said, give me a down payment. I want to check your credit.
That is absolutely right. 20% down. We're going to check your credit. There's not going to be any liar loans or no doc loans. All these things happen at the insistence of Congress.
Homeownership is very important.
Congressman Elijah Cummings says government should encourage home ownership. Government was saying loan more to people with no credit.
Their government went beyond where government should have gone.
That candor's refreshing. Until recently, politicians were cheerleading for Fannie and Freddie.
These are sound. These institutions are in sound shape.
Things are good in the housing market.
I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially.
Now that the music stopped and the bubbles burst,
mortgage foreclosures reach an all-time high.
Are the politicians saying, sorry, we made a mistake? No. Now they tell us government must do more.
The federal government must implement a program.
That's very much like you see a building on fire. Would you call the arsonist who created it to help you put it out? No, you wouldn't. But we're calling on Congress that created the problem to help us solve it.
Congress passed a bailout bill to buy up those toxic assets and prop up shaky banks. Did that help?
Stocks dropped 800 points today before...
Apparently not.
These people are saying, we've got to fix it. Give us the authority. And look what's happening. It's getting worse, not better.
It's just a panicked overreaction.
Without a rescue, we were told, America will spiral into another Great Depression. If government doesn't act, says Congressman Cummings, his constituents in Maryland won't be able to get credit to buy homes and cars.
I have a duty to try to protect those people.
Taking billions from taxpayers and giving it to these banks that made stupid decisions is going to help those people?
We've got to stop the bleeding.
But wait a minute.
Actually, I can have an approval decision for you in just a few minutes.
We hear that credit's locked up, things frozen, but you can go out now and get a loan for a house if your credit's good.
Refinance with LendingTree.
Are you sure it's right for the government to do something? Maybe the government should do nothing.
Well,
Let the market handle.
We can't afford to continue to do nothing.
But bailouts just encourage more reckless lending and will prolong the crisis, say Roberts and Williams.
The problem is when you start saying, nobody can make a bad decision. We'll always take care of you.
They say these companies are too big to fail.
No company is too big to fail. Business failure is just as critical to a market system as business success. It tells people that you're doing the wrong thing.
There would still be pain, they say, job loss, credit problems. But maybe it would be smarter to take our lumps now and get it over with.
We created a housing bubble, and it's time for the bubble to break. That's creating spontaneous order. That's getting back to the normal state of affairs.
Let the bubble pop, they say. Then we can start again.
when 2020 returns. They're waiting for Washington to help. They're not.
They build 70 homes quickly, while you bureaucrats fiddle.
More of John Stossel's politically incorrect guide to politics, next.
One thing everyone says we need government for is to come to our aid during a disaster, like a hurricane.
Hurricane Katrina slamming into the Gulf Coast.
It's 3 years now since Katrina ravaged New Orleans. After the storm, government promised to help rebuild.
Read my lips. We will rebuild New Orleans.
And you taxpayers will pay for it.
The Senate agreeing to provide $10.5 billion.
Another $51.8 billion.
But despite the politicians' promises and the billions of dollars spent, today, a big part of New Orleans still looks like this. It's as if Katrina happened a month ago. Here in the 9th Ward, block after block is a disaster. Why hasn't the area been rebuilt? Partly because you want to rebuild, you have to get a permit.
We was not able to get a permit not to rebuild, but just to repair.
Reverend Lewis Adams wanted to repair his church. Dolores Davis tried to rebuild her home.
It's, been one thing after another.
She applied to a state program that promises to help people rebuild.
They have hundreds of people working for them.
But even with all those people working, 2 years later, she still waits.
You have one worker this day, and next week you talk to another worker, you have to explain the same thing over and over.
New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin has an excuse for why more hasn't been rebuilt.
You have to go through 10 different approval processes before you can get something actually built. Governments are not built for speed, period.
Why aren't governments built for speed? Sometimes you need speed.
Everyone wants to make sure there's checks and balances.
Those checks and balances are why much of New Orleans still looks like this. Yet less than a mile away is this neighborhood, filled with nice-looking homes. How could this be built? Well, here, government wasn't involved. Habitat for Humanity built these homes.
When they say they're going to come in for a build, they build the houses. I mean, they're for real.
Harry Connick Jr. might have said we. He helped build these homes. It was spontaneous order. He and others just decided that building homes was the right thing to do. The way the skaters decide which way they'll turn.
Toured out through the back.
Malik Rahim's charity built this home, and others like it.
Everything that we have done, we've been able to accomplish this in spite of the government.
Rahim gave up on government. He says getting those billions of your dollars set aside for rebuilding is nearly impossible. He gets money from passers-by. And this is where you get the money, with this sign that says, "Get out of the car, lend us a hand"?
That's right.
And people do get out to help.
In fact, we can get families in homes by next summer. We can move this quickly. It's ready to go.
Celebrities pitched in.
Brad Pitt has done more for this community than anyone.
Brad Pitt's doing more than the government?
I would say 10 times more than the government.
We'll start one building at a time.
With no need to wait for government money, homes started going up. All these volunteers, they did what the government didn't do.
That's right. That's right.
Other celebrities pitched in.
Michael Moore, if you're watching this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Bruce Springsteen, Bonnie Raitt. Every house that you see that's been rebuilt because of volunteers. Not because of the government, volunteers.
And the bureaucrats were an obstacle to this?
Oh, well, they had about 9 different agencies that you had to go through. The average person didn't know what to do.
To build this, Habitat for Humanity employed specialists who know how to fight through bureaucracy. They build 70 homes quickly.
Yeah.
Well, you bureaucrats fiddle.
Well, I don't know if we fiddled, but we're seeing private sector does it better.
Why?
Because there's not a lot of rules and regulations.
Wouldn't it be better if you guys in government just got out of the way?
Well, I don't think government can totally get out of the way. We can make it easier.
And Nagin claims he has made it easier for people.
We issued thousands and thousands of permits right after Katrina. So we tried to get out of the way, and I think it paid off for us. We have everything online, so you can go online, you can visit a kiosk.
Oh, good. Oh, kiosks. So after meeting with the mayor, I went to City Hall to try the kiosks. The first one I tried didn't work. Maybe this one. None of the kiosks worked. No.
How can I help you?
But there was a helpful clerk.
I'd like to know what it takes to build a house.
If you're doing new construction, you need 2 sets of architectural plans with a live seal from Louisiana Registered Architect to Engineer.
A live seal? But the help she gave
You'd also need a plot plan to make sure it meets the zoning requirements.
was terrifying.
A construction benchmark, which is a FEMA requirement. This is the requirement sheet. And this is a form that FEMA has. This is our fee schedule, which explains the building permit fee and the plan review fee.
It took more than 10 minutes for her just to explain the permits.
We would start off by looking up your damage assessment. If you want to dispute the damage assessment, this is FEMA's form.
If I want to rebuild, I have to get a plot plan, an architectural plan, a benchmark certificate, 2 sets of complete plans completely detailing the work, a VOCARI approval, HDLC approval, state certification.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep in mind, if you're doing any work in a historic district, you have to jump through some hoops.
He's not trying to make it complicated. Each of those hoops was meant to protect the public from some problem that occurred years ago. That's what governments do, but it creates horrific bureaucracy. Nagin insisted I interview him in this half-finished theater because he wanted to show off what his city's building. But of more than 400 projects the mayor promotes as his recovery in progress, only 42 are complete. In the 9th Ward, where homes are complete, it was because of spontaneous order. And it's that that's bringing New Orleans back to life.
That's what made America great. The government ain't made America great. It's people made America great.
When 2020 returns, Stossel lays it all out.
How far will it go?
The endless paper trail to run for political office.
I quit.
Next.
Do you want to live here? This year, $1 billion will be spent in pursuit of this house. That's why John McCain said we need campaign finance reform to regulate that money. Well, we've got it. How's that working out? Senator John McCain says he's a problem solver.
I've fought to get $1 million checks out of our elections.
He's proud of McCain-Feingold.
And the bill is passed.
The law which promised to curb the influence of big money on politics.
The problem can be cured to a large degree by the provisions in this bill.
Before McCain-Feingold, 98% of congressional incumbents were being reelected. With money playing a lesser role, said McCain, challengers will have a better chance.
Stand up and fight.
People like the idea of campaign finance reform. But campaign finance laws, like all of government's laws, are subject to a still more powerful law, the law of unintended consequences.
How are you? I'm Dr. Ada Fisher.
In the last couple elections, Ada Fisher, a retired doctor, ran for Congress in North Carolina.
Time to get a doctor in the house. Vote for me.
She ran on a shoestring, campaigning out of her own car.
Let me give you a card here.
Making her own signs and buttons. For staff, she relied exclusively on volunteers.
We don't have any money to pay anybody.
A recent college graduate volunteered to be her campaign treasurer. It was supposed to be fun, educational. But then they came up against campaign finance laws.
This big book is the FEC rules. The book is close to 500 pages of small print double columns.
That's typical of Washington's rules. And just how long is 500 pages of federal fine print? Let's find out. We taped them together. And here we are at Giant Stadium. How far will it go? It spanned the whole field and halfway back. No wonder Fisher and her young treasurer had trouble wrestling with all that legalese and filed some reports late.
We get a notice we're being fined for failure to file.
Nearly $10,000.
They then decide that they want to hold a candidate and a treasurer personally liable.
That's a great way to get volunteers out. Tell them if they fail to file a form on time, they're personally liable for fines and penalties. And it's just a classic example of the way in which the law benefits insiders.
Brad Smith knows all about cases like Fisher's. He was chairman of the Federal Election Commission when it first fined Fisher. And yet...
You know, he hates campaign finance reform. Bradley Smith does.
Smith does. The ex-chairman of the commission thinks campaign finance reform is a disaster.
What we've done is we've created a system in which it's harder and harder to engage in real grassroots activity. That's what these laws are in the real-life practice.
Thank you.
Senator McCain wouldn't talk to us about campaign finance, so I talked to these people whose organizations support campaign finance laws. Her group was once headed by McCain, and the McCain campaign's lawyer founded his.
We have areas of law that are complex.
No kidding, says Becky Cornwell.
I have not really understood what I've been doing, which makes me sound stupid, but I'm not.
All she did was oppose a ballot measure, which would have allowed a Denver, Colorado suburb to annex her little town. She and some neighbors printed signs and T-shirts and gathered signatures for a petition.
I just volunteered to walk around and talk to neighbors.
But today's campaign finance laws go well beyond national elections. Now state laws cover things like local ballot measures. And under Colorado's rules, the fact that Becky's group exercised their free speech was enough for their political opponents to slap them with a lawsuit because they didn't register as an issue committee and report all their expenses.
The lawsuit was used in an effort to shut us up about the annexation. They wanted to scare us enough and clobber us with these laws so that we wouldn't talk about it anymore.
That's the problem. Campaign finance rules have become a tool that insiders use to silence their opponents. These people are printing T-shirts and yard signs, and they're in trouble?
That law was passed by the voters of the state of Colorado, so I think it, to some degree, reflects voter sentiment.
They're paying more on legal fees than they paid on the campaign.
Well, and I think that it's great that they're trying to express their views, but there are rules on the books. It's very simple. You go on their websites and check it out.
It's very simple?
It's pretty simple.
Would you fill it out?
Sure.
Here's that simple form.
Excellent.
You have a pen?
But this is the instruction manual. This is really good. I'm happy to see that the state of Colorado is doing this much to help people understand and comply with their campaign finance laws.
Can we tape you doing it now?
I have plans for the evening. Actually, I have, I'm late, I think.
None of them would complete all the forms that day.
Because it's a setup.
Washington lawyer Paul Ryan did send in the properly filled out forms a week later.
I do this stuff for a living, though. I don't know if I'm an appropriate sample.
This economics professor runs tests with a better sample.
This is going to be a role-playing exercise.
He has educated people try to fill out forms like Colorado's.
I wasn't trying to throw any curveballs here, but just to see if people can follow the instructions.
2020 paid each of these people $20 to give it a try, and $20 more if they completed the forms correctly. The result?
No one got them all right.
Before this group, he tested another 200 people. Every one violated the law.
A regular citizen cannot read this legalese.
I'd rather just not get involved in the political process if I have to go through the nonsense that I had to go through today.
That's how Becky and her neighbors feel, even though they won their anti-annexation fight.
It'd be very difficult to throw yourself in front of that bus again.
Did the campaign finance bus at least flatten the fat cats too? No. Barack Obama backed out of public financing so he could keep attending $20,000 a plate fundraisers. John McCain himself has skirted his own donation limits. And the big money that was banned by McCain-Feingold and this ream of rules, well, it's still in the game. Instead of going to candidates or parties, now it goes to outside groups, which bankroll attack ads like these.
Will Obama really raise taxes on tens of thousands of middle-class workers?
Yes, we can! As Alaska governor, Palin promotes the vicious aerial killing of wolves.
Even the reformers admit McCain's reforms didn't stop big money.
It's like squeezing a balloon. You just squeeze down somewhere and it pops up somewhere else.
So then why do we need these rules?
It addressed a specific problem, and then you get new problems.
You can't take money out of politics. As long as you've got $3 trillion being taxed and spent by the federal government, people are going to want to get control of that.
Did reform at least make elections more competitive? No again. Just as many congressional incumbents are being reelected now as were during the Watergate era. The Ada Fishers of the world, she lost both times she ran for Congress. They've learned that challenging the political class is hard to do.
Sure, I'm running for North Carolina House. The system is rigged for incumbents and against challengers because incumbents already know the game. They have gamed the game to win. So you hate to put it bluntly, but you're screwed.
When 2020 returns, he's really rich. So why are you helping pay his bills?
So you farmers are now a bunch of parasites feeding off the taxpayer.
When John Stossel's politically incorrect guide to politics continues next.
Every year, politicians warn, if we want to put food on our tables, we have to save the family farm. When they say that, watch your wallet.
Lawmakers in Washington have passed a new farm bill.
This year, Congress passed another $300 billion farm bill. Senator McCain called it bloated legislation that will do more harm than good. But Senator Obama supported it.
We cannot turn back, not with an economy to fix and farms to save.
Saving farms is what politicians promise that farm supports will do.
Now, how old is this kid?
It's the reason they do photo ops like this one. Senator Obama wouldn't talk to me about the farm bill. In fact, we contacted 69 members of Congress who voted for it, but couldn't get any of them to talk to us. Finally, Randy Kuhl of New York and Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas agreed to speak.
Family farms, small farms are important.
And I don't think we want anybody in this country to starve.
People would starve?
They go out of business, then they'd be forced to move elsewhere and find different jobs.
Well, that's not starving, that's finding a different job.
But if they don't have a job, then they're going to starve.
Well, they're doing pretty well in Nebraska, where 2020 went as part of ABC's election project, 50 states in 50 days. Nebraska corn farmer Mike Korth gets subsidies. He'll take the money, he says, but he's against the farm bill.
It's a bad bill. In the end, if you take a bunch of money, it's like they grab the treasure chest, they open the door on it, and whoever can get the most out of it, you just run away with it.
Nebraska farmers are running away with a lot of your money. Home prices may have been falling in most of America, but farmland prices have been rising. Here they've shot up 77% in 4 years. Farm subsidies rarely go to poor people. The average farmer makes twice what the average American earns. Yet Nebraska politicians want more.
We need to get farmers a better safety net here.
If you're a politician from Nebraska and you want to get elected, Republican or Democrat, the way to do that is to say, I support farm subsidies.
Yes, that's a very important thing to our farmer is subsidies.
They would lose dramatic population if the subsidies weren't there at all.
But despite the billions spent on subsidies, farm towns are smaller than ever. In Mike Korth's town, store after store is boarded up.
It's pretty sad. The school at one time had just short of 1,000 kids in it, and now we don't have 300.
It hasn't kept these small towns alive.
Well, I think it has. I'm from a small town of 72 people. I am, and I'm going to tell you, farm subsidies have helped that town.
After this interview, we researched his town. It was twice as big during the Depression. Population has dropped steadily ever since. Well, this isn't working.
Well, I think it is.
We're all paying more. You guys are on welfare. It's not working.
Actually, I disagree with that because I think it is working.
Actually, a government study found that the more farm aid a county got, the more likely it was to lose population. Why would that be? Because subsidies make it harder for smaller farmers to compete. Economist Walter Williams.
The farm subsidies go to very, very wealthy farmers, not the ma and pa farm. It's these huge agribusinesses that get the big subsidies.
Farmers like Maurice Wilder. He's been America's single biggest recipient of farm subsidies. He wouldn't let us take a picture of his jet, but here he is at one of his many homes. Wilder's estimated to be worth $500 million. But he still gets your help making ends meet.
Where is the limit where you say, you know what, you're big enough now, you can put your pants on by yourself?
How do rich farmers legally get subsidies? The Farm Bill does say no payments to farmers who make more than $1.25 million a year.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you, any one of them guys, they've got accountants that can hide that income.
When you have a farm bill this size, this stretches almost 2 football fields. There are loopholes in here somewhere for a wealthy farmer to crawl through.
I don't blame anybody from taking it when it's there and available.
You're getting a handout.
Well, they're getting, you know, in a sense, it is a handout.
This is not a handout, take it, and if you lose it, fine, walk away. Not at all.
It's not?
No, it's not.
Why isn't that a handout?
I don't term it a handout, I term it an investment.
But that's your money he's investing. And why? We don't need farm subsidies to have an ample food supply. I bet you didn't know that the growers of most crops don't get subsidies. Growers of apples, bananas, broccoli, cabbage, cantaloupe, carrots, cauliflower, grapes, lemons, limes, lettuce, and dozens of other crops get no subsidies. There's no cabbage crisis or pineapple panic. And yet, because big crops get subsidies like rice and corn, food costs more.
I'm not used to paying these prices.
Another reason prices are high is that farmers get paid for not farming.
Get a government payment on it, about $26,000.
More than $20,000 a year for not farming his land. Real estate agents even use farm payments to sell homes to non-farmers. Agents didn't want to say that on television, so our producer posed as a home buyer and brought along a video camera.
Do you have to farm it? Do you have to farm it to receive it? No. It's like a little bonus that you don't really have to do anything to get.
All these homes get government payments, though nothing's farmed here. The owner of this home collected $7,000.
Well, it's like offered to us.
She isn't exactly sure why.
I think it's a weird setup, but there's a lot of weird setups.
This is just a crazy system. It's left over from the 1930s, left over from the Depression, and it's a great example of how nothing is as permanent as a temporary government program.
Of course, it is true that without subsidies, some bureaucrats would be out of work, and some farms would go out of business. But that's okay, say economists. It's part of the creative destruction that makes America strong.
When there's progress, certain jobs are destroyed and certain jobs are created. The guy who delivered ice to my house, he doesn't have the job because we have refrigerators. We're better off. Now, the guy who lost his job selling ice, he probably got some other job. But we would have been held back if we had tried to save his job.
But today in America, politicians are eager to spend your money to keep certain auto companies afloat.
Loan guarantees that we've already passed for our auto industry.
Certain banks in business.
We must pass legislation to address this crisis.
And to keep farms from closing.
I think we might have to get 2 or 3 of these, don't you?
Yeah.
There is one country that has abolished farm subsidies, New Zealand. There were riots and protests when they did that. Farmers said, we'll go bankrupt. People said, we'll starve. But it didn't happen. In fact, farm productivity quintupled.
Agriculture there has boomed once they got people off the dole. Instead of sucking up to you politicians, they found ways to be more efficient as farmers.
I don't have many farmers sucking up. I do have them coming in and thanking me for allowing their family farm to survive.
Clothing and shelter are important too. Why don't we subsidize them? If this works so well, why don't we just subsidize everything?
Well, I would say to you that you don't want to push us.
When we come back, the White House and your house, who's the boss? In 18 days, when we vote in the presidential election, what's at stake? What will be decided? The pundits say the election will decide
Who do you want to run this country? One of these guys is going to be running the country.
We're trying to figure out who should run the country. That has to be a joke. That has to be a badge, well, or a misunderstanding at least, at the minimum.
These economists want to point out that you, all of you, really run America. That the White House doesn't govern what happens in your house, and the president certainly cannot control the economy.
Politicians have immense power to do harm to the economy, but they have very little power to do good.
We naturally assume that good stuff that happened must have been caused by someone, the president or an expert. We forget solutions emerge without anyone designing them.
I feel change in the air.
Most change in America doesn't come from politicians. It comes from people inventing things and creating the telephone, the telegraph, the computer. All those kinds of things didn't come from government. They came from people. Our families, our romances, our jobs, our travel, our learning. We don't get that from the government.
People say it's government's job to make life better for us.
If you really want to make life better, back off, get out of the way, let people make their own lives better. Take responsibility for your lives, accept that the government's role is to balance the budget and protect you from foreign threats, and the rest of your life is your business. Our world is going to get better and better as long as we keep the politicians from screwing it up.
That's our program for tonight. For more politically incorrect stories, go to my webpage at abcnews.com.